For many Black Americans, Independence Day is not July 4th. It's June 19th, or Juneteenth, the day the last enslaved people in the U.S. were told they were free. This year's will be feted with a little more urgency, after George Floyd's death reignited Black Americans' fight for equality. President Lincoln issued the Emancipation Proclamation on January 1st, 1863. But 2.5 long years passed between enslaved Texans being declared free to them being told about it. News traveled pretty slowly in the 19th century, and even slower for slave owners trying to avoid it. During the Civil War, they fled west, taking thousands of enslaved people far from where Union forces could liberate them. But on June 19, 1865, General Gordon Granger stood on the balcony of a home made with slave labor to read an order that gave an absolute equality of rights and rights of property between former masters and slaves. But absolute equality has been eluding Black Americans ever since. Although Juneteenth celebrations would pop up outside of Texas, a century of fighting to survive lynching, segregation, and Jim Crow laws tempered the anniversary's national momentum. After Martin Luther King Jr.'s assassination in 1968, his Poor People's Campaign settled on June 19th for its Solidarity Day rally, which symbolically connected the fight against poverty to enslaved ancestors. Since then, states have slowly come around to officially recognizing the holiday. Texas fittingly was the first in 1980, marking a day that late State Representative Al Edwards said triggered a series of events that defines the challenges and responsibilities of successive generations. New Hampshire became the latest state last year. But this is still the country that killed Breonna Taylor, Rayshard Brooks, and George Floyd. A country whose president called Americans protesting the injustice thugs. The distance from true equality may be what kept Black Americans from celebrating Juneteenth. But today, the journey toward closing that gap is exactly what makes it meaningful. This year, it comes as protesters demand that institutions who claim to protect Black Americans don't target them, that the companies who market to Black Americans, including ours, also hire them and pay them fairly, and that the system that's made Black Americans more vulnerable to COVID-19 and the economic crisis is broken. Over 150 years later, Juneteenth is still about how long absolute equality takes to arrive.
Black Lives Matter.